Well, welcome, and with apologies in front, to another edition of What the Franklin. I'm Chip Franklin. That, of course, is Nikki Medoro, and it's great to have you guys here. Always great to talk to you. This is, as this story breaks today, and the Supreme Court has ruled that the abortion pill, which is, how do you say that word again?
Mifepristone.
Mifepristone.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's why I always hang around you. Mifepristone is going to be available now. This is huge, yes. And it is a little bit of a nuanced decision, but it really emphasizes how important it is for Democrats to win in the fall, not just the White House, but everywhere, because there will be, if Trump were to be president, he's already pledged to evangelicals to pass a federal law with, I don't know how he'd do it without the House, but seeing where the House is, a federal law banning this, or he could do it. He could try to just do it without the law. I mean, nothing surprises us anymore. But it is interesting to see this ruling. Did you, and when you heard it this morning, what was your first thought? Is that good or bad for Democrats?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, obviously, with the overturning of Roe, I would say that.
By the way, it was 9-0. So
yeah, it was unanimous from the Supreme Court. My first question was, they based their ruling on a lack of standing, right? They couldn't show that people were harmed. I mean, I think mifepristone has been available since 2000. I mean, it's been around for an extremely long time.
FDA approved is hard to overturn.
Exactly.
To say harming people. Yeah.
And it's, you're talking about a federal agency who is tasked with deciding these things. And then you're going to leave it up to justices. And that was basically what they were saying. They're like, this doesn't belong here. This doesn't belong in the high court. Now, I would also say, this lack of standing raises an interesting question, in the whole abortion debate. Who is asking you to, kind of protect them? And obviously they've convinced the U.S. Supreme Court that they did have standing. That's why we lost with the Dobbs decision. But as far as it hurting the Democrats, I mean, obviously President Biden came out with a statement saying, obviously this doesn't change the fact that the Republicans did overturn Roe v. Wade, are going after reproductive freedom. And I absolutely agree. I think one person I was following online said something that was really interesting. They're like, do you think this has to do with the fact that it had to do with the pharmaceutical industry? That there was lobbying from the pharmaceutical industry saying, do you know how many people and how much money we make off of this?
You mean
it has nothing to do.
They promised Thomas a trip to Bali?
Exactly. His own yacht this time, so he has to stop hitching a ride with somebody else. It could be that too. I don't know.
Anna Navarro was saying that, look, you got to understand, this was based. The ruling was based on the standing of the previous case and not rather than the merits. And in fact, there was one person I read. It said the 25-page decision does not dismiss the merits of a ban on the abortion bill and contains a little bit of a dog whistle to Congress and governors. They would need to legislate such an effort, as it notes other avenues to object to the decision. So they're leaving it open for states to still.
Always leaving it open to the states.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's the thing that bothers me is
states like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean,
right?
Well,
yeah, basically, you're leaving it up to people that are run by wackadoos.
Yeah, but I just don't know. When most people hear this, and abortion is very complicated and very it'd been a third rail for my entire life, until Reagan came along, and then we started hearing more about it. But it wasn't until Trump got hold of 3 justices, and you put in Coney Barrett, not so much Gorsuch, but existing Alito and Thomas, and I just think that. What they did, the 9-0 thing made me really worried, because that told me that there was not really, they're not ruling on abortion. And most people think it was a victory for abortion. In essence, what it said was that the previous ruling from the other court was baseless. Is that the right word? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, the lack of standing means there's lack of harm, right? There's and lack of needing to be before the high court, sending it back. I don't like the idea of leaving it up to the states. I think that is extremely dangerous, especially for women. I was, just because this ruling was coming, on my social media feeds, old, videos are coming up, and Kamala Harris interviewing Supreme, not Gorsuch, the other one, the beer drinker.
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh, thank you. The beer drinker.
Beer. We drank beer. Yeah.
She's like, name me another law that regulates the man's body. Name one law. And he's like, and I can already hear people screaming, that's because women are the only ones that can have babies. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with the regulation of our body. And it blows my mind that there are conservatives and small government people out there that are saying, I don't want the government in my life. And yet the most intimate way they do. And it doesn't make
I
sense.
just wonder, like, we got a story coming up in a few minutes about what Trump did immediately after his conviction to show how he literally understands how the process works. And then we're going to get into a thing that about numbers, and there's a specific number that will determine the fate of our nation. It's between 1 and 100. No, seriously,
is one good and 100 bad, or
no, it's a number between 1 and 100.
Okay,
that it's a number the Democrats need. Actually, the country needs in order to survive, in my opinion. All right, so, but obviously, I think that you still, at this point, you still have people like Trump and others. You remember Trump, in that famous interview with Chris Matthews, there has to be some sort of punishment.
Yes.
And I think that when you allow the states to do that, we've already had states float the idea of electrocution or execution, or I don't know how they would do it, but for women that have them, plus doctors as well. And then states like, I want to say Alabama, and I apologize if it's not Alabama, but like just giving somebody a ride.
Oh yeah.
To a
it's
clinic.
Insane.
It's
insane. I have a friend,
Texas, yeah.
One of my best friends lives in Idaho, and she's from California, but she's lived in Idaho for a very long time. And she's saying there's so few doctors now. I mean, literally they're running out of doctors because doctors are kind of fed up with the rules and the regulations of how to take care of their patients. I'm not saying there's none, but there is a severe doctor shortage in states like Idaho. So yeah, you can go and think that you have your freedom in states like Idaho. You are losing your freedom, and you're allowing it to happen by living in these states and voting the way you vote.
So, I guess the thought I have is, just to go to the worst possible scenario, which is entirely possible, is that Trump is somehow, wins the electoral votes. He's going to lose by 8 or 9 million popular votes.
Yeah.
And for the record, the Republicans have not won the popular vote in a presidential election but once in 36 years.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. And it's
almost as if, people vote, not land, but whatever. Okay.
Right. Well, the Electoral College, it's in the Constitution. It's going to be there for a while until the Republicans, lose a few races. But that's not going to happen because, what the Republicans want in general, and I know this is a generalization, but they scare people. Right. And that's what they do real well. They frighten them with immigrants, the lies about immigrants coming across the border. It's funny, too. I had a conversation. I do a podcast with Frank Figliuzzi, the former assistant director of the FBI. And I said something once and he goes, well, I go, it's bullshit. When he was trying to tell me that, there's possible terrorists have come across the border.
Of course.
Well, here's the deal. You're not a terrorist until you do an act of terror, as far as I'm concerned,
Exactly.
And so if in fact, Al-Qaeda is trying to wade through, the Rio Grande in the middle of the night and climb a fence and hide rattlesnakes, they don't need to do that. I mean, it's just like fentanyl. Fentanyl doesn't come across the border of Mexico with the numbers it does when it comes into Long Beach, or it comes from China.
In trucks.
Yeah. So when you hear the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Trumps talk about the border, it's all lies or obfuscation at the very least. That they're doing is they're trying to make you believe, like that woman did after the State of the Union when she told that story of that sex trafficking case that had not occurred in the United States, and it occurred under George W. Bush. Why
deal with facts, Chip? This is not a party that likes facts. No, they hate facts.
But there are Republicans I know that shake their head when this happens, and so this is MAGA nation. It's not. Yeah, it's not what I knew as the Republican Party. And so when I see Paul Ryan step forward and others, I begin to get the sense that. Although it might be too late, that the Republicans realize that the danger, that's lurking, out here.
But they're too weak and scared to actually band together to do something about it. If they were smart, they would. I know they tried in 2016. They tried to call out Trump. They were really hoping he wouldn't be elected, but he got elected. But now the fact that there were so many and they let all these wackadoos like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Boeberts and all those in there, they're so polluted with this cultish mindset that they're going to have to stick together to get not only those people out, but kind of break this, I don't know, control that Trump and MAGA have over the party. I don't see it happening. I don't think they're strong enough.
I think that what you're going to see is Trump's continued cognitive decline. I still believe he's not going to do this debate in 2 weeks.
Is he going to start talking about sharks and being electrocuted and
Right.
batteries
No,
in the
no. I mean,
ocean?
that was a great example. I mean, there's a story today in Mediaite about him trashing Milwaukee. Of course, that's where the Republican National Convention is in July, and where I may be actually just to go.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, I was going to go to Chicago, but the Democratic one won't be quite as fun, and there'll be all the crazy people from the Republican Party there as well. I just can't remember. I've been to 8 of these, and I can't remember if I can actually get into the parking lot where all the crazy people are, because you don't.
I think you can. How do the crazy people get in?
You
have that crazy.
What's that? No. What I mean is, I want to. I've been inside before, and nothing really happens inside. There's not, especially there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday night is everybody's gone. They all split on Thursday day because that's the coronation. But the first couple nights, you can talk to people outside anyway. But so trashing Milwaukee, which is a state, one of the pivotal swing states that Trump needs to win, just goes to show you that his brain is starting to.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He can insult. He can insult veterans. He can insult women. He can insult anybody. You think that Milwaukee cares?
Well,
you think that's the line?
But independents are a big part of this election. And I don't know how anybody could possibly be independent. It reminds me of that story of the guy on the airplane and the flight attendant comes up and offers dinner. Here on one plate, I have a pile of dog shit. And the other, I have chicken. And the person goes, how's the chicken cooked? Right. So I mean, that's
pretty good.
That's kind of where we are now. That's not mine, but it's an approximation of some I heard. Anyway, so, moving forward, if there were to be a ban on abortion, a federal ban, you'd have to get the House and Senate obviously behind it. There would be a filibuster by the Democrats. And again,
and it wouldn't serve Republicans. I don't know. I'm not optimistic that I want Roe back. Basically, I want more freedom for every single state across our nation. I don't think
if you want Roe, you want a national mandate that a woman has
back to the constitutional right. Yeah.
And you can make with Trump lying, saying that they're killing babies that have been born and that kind of bullshit. I mean, when you have that, obviously that's the kind of back to my point. They're trying to scare people. They're trying to, they have this idea. And, I guarantee you abortion has touched the lives of every single Republican out there, every single one.
But it doesn't make political sense for Republicans to keep doing it. Now they're going to hide behind states' rights. That's what they're going to do. If they're smart, if they try to go after, if Trump becomes president and they start this whole national ban BS, I don't know, man. I just think there'll be a revolt. I just can't see how for decades their whole thing was states' rights, states' rights. Now you're going to go to a federal ban? Are you serious? So I don't know, but I don't put anything past this party. I guess that's what I'm saying.
All right. So anyway, obviously we're waiting on another Supreme Court decision to come out today or tomorrow.
Okay.
As they're finishing up their schedule, and obviously the immunity case is huge. And I guarantee you the reason they're holding on to the immunity case as long as just to delay, and stop the ability of Jack
What do you
Smith
think is going to happen with this?
I think they're going to carve it up and say that in certain cases, like for example, if the president, like President Obama, when he went in with SEAL Team 6 to get Osama bin Laden, and they killed him in the process, right? Could you try him in an international or in a court here in the United States for murder? Well, it's obviously different than Lieutenant Calley in Vietnam that put civilians in a ditch and just shot them.
Right.
It's a different thing. So I think that they're going to try to deal with the subject of presidential immunity. That's obviously right through his course of actions. But what Trump's case is that he thought the election was stolen, and that sending people to the Capitol to interfere with the process was their right as Americans. Obviously, none of that makes any sense to you and I, but we'll see. And I don't think they're going to rule on any of those issues. I don't think they'll rule on the document issue, but I do think that it's, what Judge Cannon has done with the document case, in essence, by saying
it's criminal.
It's criminal. It really is. I mean, she was appointed by him, and everything she's done has kept the case.
Delay. Yeah. I mean, she could not be more in the pocket of Donald Trump. She just could not be. It's sometimes, and I don't want to get on some sort of high horse, but how can they live with themselves? Just follow.
That is kind of a high horse.
I know, but it's just, you have a very important job. Like, it's not like what we do, right? you are a judge. You're making a decision that has such huge ramifications. And you're just going to fall in line behind this asshat who's probably talking crap about you behind your back or in front of the cameras because he doesn't give a crap. Like, I don't understand the appeal, Chip. It bothers me that I don't get it, but I also know they live in this echo chamber of Fox News and OAN
No,
and all that.
that's exactly right.
It.
I think when you look at the things they understand, right? If you have a conversation with somebody, and I do this now, when I see, like, I was going to the gym the other day, and this guy had a car full of MAGA stuff, and it was funny too because it was on a McLaren. Which is like I said, McLaren, is that the name of the car?
I've heard of that car,
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's like a $250,000 car, and he has bumper stickers on it, all this stuff about MAGA and all. Anyway, so
God, drink the Kool-Aid, man. Jeez.
And I'm walking by, and I'm wearing my Biden shirt, just Biden
hair
shirt. Yeah. Or I also have one that says FDJT.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what that means, right?
Donald
anyway,
yes,
yeah. So I wear that. I wear it, and this guy says to me, he said, "Loser," and I go, "Really?"
You have bumper stickers on your McLaren.
My guy won the election by 7 million votes, and he goes, "Stolen," and I went. I go, you're an idiot.
I can totally see. I would never get into a conversation with anyone. I think they'd be crazy. I
always like to talk to people. Want to talk about the economy, and then of course I can,
I talk about the economy as he's standing in front of his McLaren would be hilarious. Like, really, is the economy hurting that much for you?
And he was like one of these 52-year-old guys that's single and.
Right. Guess why? Because he has bumper stickers of Trump on his McLaren.
He's like the Tinder nightmare guy, right? So and women see it. He's reasonably looking, but if you go 30 seconds, any conversation with him, I'm sure. But anyway, but so I think that one of the things that so looking over the next 30 days, I mean, and I want to get to Hunter Biden's conviction in a second, but looking over the next 30 days. Obviously, we're going to have a debate scheduled. I think that what Trump is going to realize is that without an audience, he's going to be up there bare bones, and without any Sean Hannity or Laura.
Is that what they decided? No audience.
No audience, and cutting his mic off when he's done when his time is up.
Both of them.
Yeah, but that's okay because
Biden will stop talking.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, if I were advising him, I'd say, "Whoa, man." There's no way he picks up votes in a debate. I mean, people don't understand that Joe Biden's mental acuity is still really sharp. He's suffered from a stutter his entire life, and so he's always been guarded. But he's very authoritatively speaks, but in kind of because he can bite the end of a word off. Whereas Trump.
He goes
words and starts to again. If you saw I might have that for everybody to play.
Well, find it because you also heard that Trump wanted Biden to be drug tested before the debate because they don't understand why he's so.
Well, that started with Jesse Waters and some of the other Fox people, saying that. But just for the record, and I also host a podcast. I produce a podcast called Shrinking Trump.
Right.
To psychiatrists, and they've made this point, and they've made it actually really forcefully and accurately that there are no medicines that can slow dementia or stop dementia temporarily. I mean, you could get, they made it sound like, that he was like drinking Monster
Celsius or having a
yeah, right. And he could come out there and just, but it doesn't. But again, it just goes to show you the lack of science and the lack of understanding.
They just throw anything out and it'll hit the wall. And then there'll be some MAGA idiot being like, well, that Biden's on drugs. That's why he looks good sometimes. They just feed it and then other people repeat it. That's their MO.
Yeah. Anyway, so looking at the debate, if in fact there is a debate and it's going to be at night, which is another bad time for Trump because it's the day. And again, this is stuff I've been listening to these. John Gartner, who is the host of the show, is a psychotherapist and an MD as well, and he talks about this. And I when I see this and I realize that what he's saying is true. That as he gets later in the day, it's harder and harder for him to understand and to be able to come back with something that actually makes sense. And I think one of the things that when you're talking about somebody that's in a pressure situation like that,
right?
And they have he has a narcissistic sociopathic behavior pattern. He can turn, and like, for example, I mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, that he's attacking Milwaukee.
Right.
Well, why would he do that? And in that video, when on his first campaign since the conviction, and he starts talking about the heat, and he goes, "But nobody asked about me, because I don't really care about you. I just care about your votes."
Yeah.
He said that.
I know. I don't care about you. Like, is anybody? But they're not listening. And then you see those idiots behind them, like nodding. It's like, open your ears, open your eyes. Like, that's what it honestly hurts me a little bit, because I'm close with people that are Trump supporters. I look at them, and it blows my mind. And I don't know. And I was talking to she was the maid of honor in my wedding, and she's a Trump supporter. Well, she's a Republican, so she's a Trump supporter. And she's just like, "Oh my God, Biden." And I'm like, "Are you listening to your guy?" And then I finally just ended. I'm like, "You and I don't listen to the same news. We're not consuming the same media. You are totally living in a bubble." Not to put, again, myself on a pedestal, but it's like, I have to listen and read everything because of what we do. So I get what you're saying, because I've heard that BS before. I know exactly who said it. I know what Fox News program you were listening to. But do you do the same? And it hurts, because I adore her. We have great discussions.
Yeah.
But she drank that freaking Kool-Aid, and I just don't get it.
Well, and again, and it sounds condescending. You know what that means, right? And no,
you can't use that joke on me anymore.
I know, but it does sound condescending. But it takes work. There are a lot of issues that are very complicated, and one of them is the convictions. A story that I just saw in Mediaite this morning, which I found insane, is that apparently Trump, right after his conviction, got on the phone and called Mike Johnson and said, "You got to overturn it. You got to get it overturned." Now, I don't really understand. I don't know what he was thinking, but it doesn't.
He loves asking for favors, Chip. That's why he's like, "You got to do this for me."
What did he expect the Speaker of the House to do? He called him. Here it is. This story right here.
Okay.
So, after he was found guilty on 34 counts, Trump called Speaker Mike Johnson, said, "We have to overturn this." And
good luck, buddy.
Johnson sympathized with his frustration. He said in the call, the Speaker, however, realized
can't do anything about it.
Yeah, with a slim majority, like 2 people, and obviously with the very skittish swing district members who are really worried. He can't deliver anything for Trump right now. The last thing he did for Trump was to kill that border bill, and to listen to Trump talk about the border, like he's doing on the road, is frustrating, because obviously, that's not. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a bill that Langford, the Republican senator, had helped pass that would have stopped. Well, first of all, it would have stopped catch and release.
It is the most major border bill ever to be passed in decades. Right. It passed.
Very conservative,
bipartisan,
right? And it passed the Senate by like 19 votes, and Johnson wouldn't let it on the floor. The power of the Speaker of the House is that he can keep a bill from leaving a committee and from going to the floor, and or even going into a committee. I think it can still go into a committee, but it just can't get to the floor for a full vote. Which would have embarrassed, obviously, the Republicans, because I think that the bill would have passed. And
it would have been a win for Biden, and Trump didn't want it.
Right. And he didn't want, he said that to Laura Ingraham in an interview. She goes, why no bill? And he goes, because it would have been good for the other guys. And
so then it's not a crisis. And
well, and it would be at least a year before, assuming that if Republicans won the House and the White House and the Senate, well, then you have, again, you could do whatever you want. And there was a period of time where Trump did for 2 years, had both of those. He had the House, Senate, and just not enough people, I think, to go along with some of the crazy things that they proposed. If Stephen Miller was head of Homeland Security, maybe.
Oh God. Can you imagine?
Yeah. This is a guy, of course, that has called for, was behind the idea for deporting 11 million people, which would cost trillions of dollars just to do, not to mention
destroy this country. It would it would destroy this country. Just the action of doing it.
Trying to send. First of all, where the hell will they go?
How the hell do you do it? You're going to go into neighborhoods. You're going to bust down doors. People are idiots. I swear to God, it doesn't even.
This is part of it, though, and this is part of where they are, and included in that was Trump's conversations about revenge.
Mr. President, you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
In your presidency, what they've done to you, you've got the verdict that just came through. A lot of Democrats have expressed concern that if you're elected, you're going to want revenge. And some of your supporters have said, well, mutually, we're just talking about the weaponization of the justice system against political opponents. Some of your supporters have said, well, the only way to stop this is mutually assured destruction, right? If you do it to us, we're going to do it to you. You've said, no, my revenge is going to be success for America. You've just had this verdict.
Yeah.
Do you still feel the same? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a really tough question in one way, because these are bad people. These people are sick, and they do things that are so destructive. I mean, look what they did from the day I got there. And I don't know, a lot of people said, we have no choice but to elect Trump. Republicans, because he's the only one that can withstand this. Don't forget, if it weren't me, they'd be going after somebody else. And I know a lot of the competition, they wouldn't do so well. They wouldn't be doing so well.
Okay, so it's interesting when they talk about revenge. First of all, that was the longest question in the world. That was like the questions I used to ask when we were on the radio.
I get to your points, man.
Yeah, but I think that I think the revenge thing is being played out there because Rachel Maddow says she's afraid that she'll be grabbed and sent to jail.
Again, I would hope that there's still enough sane people on different levels that would stop something like that from happening.
But think about the Supreme Court right now, and think about what Judge Alito's wife was saying. And you can say what you want about wives, but Ginny Thomas and Martha Ann Alito, they impact their husband.
Of course they do.
Right?
They're married.
Listen to what Alito said. This is this interview. We had Lauren Windsor on my really political podcast with Tom Arnold. How many podcasts do I do? Jesus.
I know, man.
Anyway, and she was really interesting because she went to this thing and she pretended to be their friend, and they opened up with this. Listen to this crazy shit. Listen.
But why do you think they're coming after you? I mean, like the whole appeal to have heaven flag was bullshit, right?
Right. But that's the other thing is the feminazis believe that he should control me.
Yeah.
So you go to hell. He never controls me.
But I have the same flag.
Yeah, I know.
No, but a lot of people fly that fucking flag.
Don't worry about it, baby.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I should watch my language.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm sorry. I did not mean.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, but it makes me so angry.
Don't get angry.
It makes me so angry.
Don't get angry. Get even. Bye, baby. Bye, cat. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow. She's a bad girl.
Cat's escort, Lewis.
Hi, Lewis. Good to see you.
Well, Lauren she gets into it, right?
It
hold on.
kind of sounds like there was alcohol flowing a little bit too. So
there was. Let me play the one that I meant to play. Actually, was the one about that flag. We've heard about the flag.
Right.
This is another version of that. And again, this is Judge Alito's wife, Martha Ann, caught off guard by Lauren Windsor, who from Undercurrent TV. She is a self-admitted gonzo journalist. She gets in there. I'll be honest with you. The fact that she's pretending to be something other than she is no different than cop going undercover.
Of course. No, it is what it is. You know what I mean? But you're not like a news reporter with a microphone in your hand. You're doing it and you're recording people without their knowledge. So
listen up.
You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag, because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up, and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white, and it's yellow and orange flames around it. And in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame. Vergogna. Vergogna. Vergogna.
That
is an angry, mean woman. Right?
Maybe as I listen to that, I'm like, maybe Alito is scared of his wife. Yeah.
Well, just for the record, in case you don't know, and I'm sure everybody watching this does, Clarence Thomas's wife was actually down there on January the 6th. How inappropriate is that?
I mean, I just feel like when you are a U.S. Supreme Court justice, let alone any other kind of judge, but you are of the high court that does not have a checks and balance on it. I don't care what anybody says. There is no oversight of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You have to, in your personal life, in your daily life, look around and be like, am I being impartial? I don't care if you're, at the court or at home. And he should have looked at his wife and been like, take the friggin' flag down. We are not those people.
Well, apparently
we have to give the appearance of being impartial. You're allowed to have your own personal views. You don't have to display them. Come on.
Well, all right. I want to get to this in a minute. When we get to our magic numbers, we'll come back to this in just a few minutes. Okay.
Okay.
We'll go to the magic numbers. Hunter Biden was convicted for filling out an application for a gun while he was using illegal narcotics. Yeah. For the record, he never fired the gun.
There was no crime committed.
Never loaded the gun. Right. So, but that wasn't any of the charges. Right. The jury found him guilty pretty quickly. And now the question is, does he go to jail? July 11th is an important day. And 11 is one of my magic numbers here. 11 is the day that they sentenced Trump. And Judge Merchan, I think, has been hesitant to put him in jail because he violated 10 gag orders and he didn't put him in jail when he could have. You or I would have been in prison.
Oh, absolutely.
And he said it out loud. It's because you're a former president and you could be the next president, right? So, however, 34 convictions by a jury of 12 people. New York is 40% Republican. Manhattan is 40% Republican. So it's not, when you hear about, oh, these are not my people. 2 people on the jury were Republicans. One who used Truth Social as a news source. And if you don't know what Truth Social is, it's Trump's crazy vomit out every day.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
And then the other one was that the other jurors said they watch Fox News regularly. So these were not what your typical Manhattan liberals. Okay, not at all. And all for 34 counts, they just said we're not guilty on one of them. 34 times they said guilty. These Republicans. Now,
fabulous day.
Right, but so my question is, how do you look at the sentencing for Donald Trump? Donald Trump continues to go out and say inflammatory things that can get people hurt, right? And he's been doing it for years now. And I mean, whether it's in interviews or it's, I have a list of stuff here I could play you, but I mean, you've heard him. You heard the revenge thing and moving forward, and the lies that he does that they're intended to inflame people. So, and even when speaking of guns. When he went to his probation hearing, did you hear this? He admitted that he still had a gun. That's a federal violation. When you are a felon, you cannot own a gun. He said, yes, I still have a gun. He knew it because Bragg took away his right to own a gun back in May when he was arrested. So this is...
But there doesn't seem to be any consequence for him.
Well, again, the consequence now is in the hands of Judge Merchan.
Right.
Whether or not to sentence him. And I guess my point is with Hunter is that if Hunter's headed to jail, then Trump should definitely be in jail. And I only say that the political side of it is if again, by the way, and also I want to mention that Trump has pardoned convicted felon Paul Manafort, convicted felon Roger Stone, convicted felon Steve Bannon, convicted felon Mike Flynn. He has pardoned all these convicted felons. And if you were to put him in jail, this fifth convicted felon in that mix. I don't think that I don't know I don't care how the Supreme Court goes. He is right now not the president of the United States.
That's true.
And a former president gets Secret Service protection. I get it, and he gets a pension, but he doesn't get to walk on water.
No,
and I think I think a lot of people feel this way. That this is where we need to go. That this is what we need to do.
Well, I'll say this, and after he was found, guilty on those 34 counts, I listened to a lot of analysis, and I think the one that stuck with me the most was, if we are supposed to treat Donald J. Trump as any American would be treated, yes, of course, he's going to have Secret Service detail, and we can't ignore it completely. He doesn't have a past criminal record as far as convictions. We know he's a criminal, but whatever. He doesn't have a past. And if it was anybody else that was found in these crimes, he most likely would get probation. So I don't think that he's going to go to jail. Do I think that he should? Absolutely. Do I think that he should have at least done a couple of nights for all the contempt charges? Hell yeah. because
Well,
we would have.
well,
But I don't see it. I don't see it happening, and it's not because I'm trying to give him a win. It's just the crime that he committed, this particular one. If it was anybody else with no criminal history, probably maybe house arrest and probation. That's what they were saying.
Hold on a second. First of all, the crime itself has to be somebody that's running for president of the United States, because what he did is he violated campaign laws by falsifying these records in order to make a political donation to his own campaign. Right. I mean, by paying what he do in order to protect his campaign, he paid off a person with money, and in that falsifying the records in order to do that. This is not like somebody cheating on their taxes. OK, this is somebody.
It is a white collar crime, though, Chip. And you know that white collar crime people and convicts.
Well, that's bullshit. The white collar criminals.
Welcome to America, my friend.
Well, that's my point.
That's why they call it white collar crime.
but again, the whole idea of white collar crime somehow being, I love that when they said there's no victim when he cheats on his taxes. Well, that's great. Then all of us should be able to cheat on our taxes.
Thank you. I agree completely.
Or to lie about the value of properties in order to save money. I mean, the reason why he was fined $500 million in that case is because over all those years, every year he does it as a new crime. So the statute of limitations, so they can go back. And when he lies about the value of a property and doesn't pay those taxes, and you compound the interest on that over a couple decades, that's where the money came from. And that lie, again, he keeps talking about Mar-a-Lago and the value of Mar-a-Lago. I mean, he had a penthouse that he was lying. He was saying was 30,000 square feet, and when it was 10,000 to get a loan, and then saying it was 10,000 when when it was time to pay taxes on it. I mean, these kind of lies, this kind of fraud. If you tried to do it at a bank, if you tried to get a loan and lied on an application, you would go to jail. Anybody would go to jail. That's fraud.
Well, not if you're Donald J. Trump.
No, but I mean, again.
But it's true. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're talking about the average me. You're talking about me. I don't have millions, billions of dollars in the bank. Come on, Chip. You know damn well that even if it wasn't Donald J. Trump, it was just another rich person, they would hire a lawyer to get him off. That's how it works.
But it's not 2 or 3 counts. It's 34 counts.
34. I am supporting you. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate and really staying in the realistic realm. I don't foresee him serving any time. I just don't. It's unfortunate. I think they should throw his ass in jail, but
I don't know for a fact. And we've probably asked an attorney, but I don't have one with us right now. What the judge can consider in sentencing.
Right.
Can he consider the other indictments? 91 indictments, including classified documents.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think so. I think if you knew somebody was on trial for rape and murder,
but they're not convicted of it. I mean, that's like you're presumed innocent, so you can't consider that.
No, but you're guilty now. This is sentencing, okay? So the whole. I mean, there's sentencing guidelines that he has to follow, and I just don't know, how wide those are. Anyway, so the question to you is that if so Hunter Biden would not have been convicted had he not been President Biden's son. Okay. Right. He wouldn't.
I mean, would he have done the plea deal? The plea deal probably would have been signed if they reached a plea deal.
The deal was signed. It was already a plea deal. Remember? And they
and then they revoked it.
Yeah. So he's being attacked on political reasons.
Of course. They're trying to act like Hunter Biden's running for president. Exactly. Here's the thing. I won't vote for Hunter Biden. There we go.
Right.
Problem solved.
All right. So I guess the number that I want to kind of jump at here, and I had four numbers here. 45 is obviously Donald Trump.
Okay.
34 is the convictions.
The number of
convictions, right? 11 is the date of his sentencing.
July 11th. Yes,
but this number is the most important to the country and Republicans, and it's 67.
67.
67 of the number of votes you need in the Senate to override a filibuster.
Good luck. Okay.
Right. Or 67 is the number you need for a supermajority to remove a president from a conviction.
Need even more luck on
and impeachment. So if Biden, I mean, we're not going to get, the Democrats aren't going to win. Although it sounds insane, we'd have to win 7 more elections because essentially, I mean, and then you'd flip it over because right now it's essentially 52 to 48. Although Manchin now is declared independent, I think you're going to see there's possibilities that, with the abortion issue, that Florida could be in play. For
That's what Biden was, saying not too long ago. He wants Florida, and then Trump was like, "I'm going to take New York," and it's like,
yeah, then that's going to happen. No, but I guess the reason I say 67 is because, with 67 votes, you could impeach members of the Supreme Court. With 67 votes, you could change the number of people in the court from 9 to whatever number seemed fair. And I think that, I've said this many times, I would like the number of people making the decisions that affect the future of this country and the world to be a little bit bigger than a pickup basketball game, right?
Yeah.
I think it should be more. I think that when you put 9 people on, when you envision the court, it was a country that, it was a brand new country. I mean, we had, 1 million people, maybe not even that. Today we have 350 million people. And I think we have to have, so with 67 votes, these are the things you can do. You can also, you could not pack the court, which is an unfair characterization of what I want. I want to have more Democrats and more Republicans on there, a wider swath of this country representative, right?
Yeah, that's what I want too.
Right. So I want to see that on the Supreme Court. Again, 67 is what we need for that. We can also, with 67 people, pass a law in Congress. And I say 67 because, again, that's a number we can overcome a filibuster, right? And to pass a regular thing, for example, like to change. Here's a good one. It's when you become a federal judge and you get appointed to the Supreme Court, that appointment to the court is not for life. The appointment for life is being a federal judge. Good friend of mine named Rod Sipple is a federal judge in Missouri, and he's been there for 30 years. Democrat, tough gig. He's had a few death penalty cases he had to deal with. Tells me it's tough. He's got that appointment for life. However, he still could, 2 things could happen. He could be impeached, just the same way we impeach the president or impeach, remove any federal person from office that has a lifetime appointment, or even an elected appointment, elected position. So 67 votes would allow us to do that, to take the Supreme Court and say, all right, these 9 guys get to stay there for 18 years.
Right. Something.
And then they move on, they move out. So once you come in, so you're constantly shifting the court. And I like that. I think that's another way that we could do this. It would make more sense than the system we have now. Now, Republicans are going to say, justifiably, that, we're whining because we've lost control of this court. And that's true. The Democrats.
Yeah, but under their conservative judge, women lost a constitutional right. So forgive us for being a tad bit concerned.
Hey, it's our fault.
We should have enshrined it.
Look, I mean, Hillary Clinton should have gone to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania the last 2 weeks. She didn't go.
I know.
No, she didn't go.
I mean, there are definite problems.
What's his name? Showing his Anthony Weiner. No, seriously, because that allowed them to. Anthony Weiner allowed Comey to go and look into the laptop by Uma. Is that what her name was? Her
Uma Abedin,
who was Hillary Clinton's top chief aide. And so all of these things the Democrats did, we screwed it up in the summer before when Podesta's emails were released and the Russians were hacked. All these things, I blame on us, and I say us because I vote Democrat these days, and and I look at this and I think to myself, we have to be thinking control in order to change, because these judges aren't going to go anywhere.
No,
in fact, the only one that's going to go anywhere would be Breyer, and Breyer's 82, and he's another liberal voice on there.
Right.
So you got Jackson, Sotomayor, and Breyer. That's it.
Well, and I also think there needs to be, if the 67 happens, we need to enshrine also rules for the court and have some sort of oversight. And by that, I mean, if recusal rules,
all the things you're saying, we need 67.
Yeah, we need recusal rules, like actual rules, not, I just don't feel like it. We pride ourselves on a checks and balance and never put one for the high court. These are men and women. These are human beings. These are fallible people. These are people that can be influenced. And for us to be like, nah, they'll take the job too seriously. Freaking Alito and Thomas have proven no freaking way.
Well, they were not envisioned by the framers to have this kind of power.
Yeah,
Marbury versus Madison that changed the whole. They exercised their power in a Supreme Court case that started a 200-year change in the way we view their their power and position in our lives. And you can go back and most of us have celebrated things like Brown versus the Board of Education and or Roe v. Wade.
Right.
But now they're looking at everything, and birth control. Judge Thomas has said that's definitely on the table. If President Trump wins, I still think that the House will go Democrat. I do. I think especially in states like California and places like Kevin McCarthy, and I believe in Bakersfield and some of the areas that lost, like Devin Nunes and others in California, you're going to pick up some seats. The Senate's more difficult. And of course, I think about Bill Maher's comments on, here you go. You look at states like the Dakotas, North and South Dakota, they have 4 senators. They got 9 people named Daryl and a few coyotes, but they got 4 freaking U.S. senators, right? Obviously something went wrong there. They deserve representation, but look in the House, they got, I think, is this North Dakota or South Dakota? I think they have 1 representative, 1 congressional representative for the whole state. I could. Representative. So you look at that and you say, well, how come they have 2 senators? I mean, what? So I go back to all of this.
Yeah.
That unless you can get the votes in the Senate, and then 67 is that magic number, it's just not going to work. And speaking of numbers, I want to bring in a guy who is from the Washington Post, and he's also he's a national correspondent for the Washington Post, and they also call him the guy behind the numbers. Philip Bump is nice enough to join us here on What the Franklin. Philip, thank you for your time. Thanks for being here, buddy. I appreciate it.
Of course, happy to be here.
Let me ask you a real quick question about Lauren Windsor and the interview with the Alitos.
Sure.
As a journalist, does it bother you that she went and undercover like a police officer? By the way, this is Nikki Medoro. Say hi.
Hi, Philip. We've talked before.
We've all been on the show together for years.
Sure.
Does it bother you as a journalist that she misrepresented herself to get that information?
I mean, look, if I had done that as an employee of the Washington Post, I would have gotten in trouble, right? Like there are standards that we apply to the way in which we gather information. I would have been perfectly fine if I had gone and said, gone to this event and paid my dues and we attended and said I was Philip Bump from the Washington Post, certainly. But, there are lots of times in which journalists get information which is not gathered through journalistic processes, right? There are times in which there are leakers that provide information to the Washington Post. I mean, Lauren Windsor has done a great job of interviewing a lot of different people using the techniques that she used with the Alitos, and then that becomes newsworthy, right? And I don't know that we necessarily need to hold her to the same standard that we would, someone who works at the Washington Post or New York Times, because what she does results in information that is itself newsworthy.
It's also dangerous what she does. She gets a lot of death threats. She doesn't get a lot of money. I know, people in this business all think we're all making big bucks, but it's not that way.
Right.
I want to talk about the numbers behind politics, because we just did this before you came on with us. I was talking about the 4 important numbers for me: 45 Trump, 34 convictions, 11, which is his sentencing date, and 67, the number of votes in the Senate in order to actually stop a president who is exercising authority that maybe this Supreme Court would allow to move forward. Can you remember a time, or do you know of a time in U.S. history when there were the Senate was held by more than 66 people of one party?
By more than 66.
I was looking it up.
Not off the top of my head.
I couldn't find it. But that number would be significant, obviously, because then you could really thwart the efforts of you could actually change the court, theoretically. If you have the House and the Senate, you could impeach members. You could impeach Alito.
But you'd have to get everybody to get along. So you're not only asking for 67, you're asking for 67 people that always agree.
Right. But I mean, again, right now, it seems that after the comments by Alito and Martha Ann Alito and Clarence Thomas and his wife, that there's something wrong in the Supreme Court, and it's a worrisome tell.
So, I think there are 2 points. The first is that the standard that's set for removal from office, it does mandate that you have 2/3 of the Senate, but it also was not foreseen that partisanship would be as fervent as it is now, right? I mean, it is not the case theoretically that you should have to have 2/3 of the members of the same party. I mean, we had a number of senators go across the aisle, so to speak, vote against or vote for conviction of Donald Trump after January 6th. So it's possible. It was just not foreseen there would be this level of partisanship. I'll also say that with all due respect to Lauren Windsor's, getting this information from the Alitos, I don't know that those interviews really changed a whole lot. I mean, Martha Ann Alito obviously, has her positions and so on and so forth, and like Ginny Thomas is a spouse of a Supreme Court justice. But the issue with Alito all along, and I wrote about this after the flag incident, the issue all along has been that those flags were merely a representation of what we already knew about him. We knew about him from his public comments, and we knew about him from the decisions that he made. I don't know that we learned a lot new either from the flags or from this most recent.
Doesn't it change it when you say it out loud?
Samuel Alito gave numerous speeches in which he said those things out loud.
Yeah, okay.
He spoke multiple times in Notre Dame Law School talking about, essentially espousing Christian nationalism. This is not a secret, right? And the fact that those recordings were obtained at this time is newsworthy in part because of when they were obtained, but it doesn't tell us a whole lot new about who Samuel Alito is or what he believes.
But don't you think that, Philip, that it will give credence to what obviously Chip is hoping for, that if, God helping, we get 67 or more people, that something can change and that this can be used by lawmakers, by Democrats to point to, be like, look, we know that this is nothing new. We knew Alito felt this way, but it's a problem. It's a problem when we start inserting, let's just say, Christian nationalism into our courts and into our politics.
Well, that's a whole different issue, right? I mean, the question of the extent to which Samuel Alito should, for example, be able to opine on whether or not Donald Trump gets absolute immunity as president, that's a separate issue, right? And I think that the questions about the fervency of Samuel Alito's beliefs and the ways in which they overlap with Trumpism should suggest that he ought to consider whether or not he should recuse himself. I think there are outstanding questions about this whole flag incident in the South. I don't think the appeal to heaven flag is really that significant. I honestly don't. I'm much more curious about the upside down flag at his home and the extent to which he knew what that represented, and the extent to which it actually was at his wife's direction and insistence. I think that's a broader question. But again, you can't kick someone off the Supreme Court because you don't agree with their views. Yeah. That's the whole point, right? The whole point is that they serve indefinitely,
and that needs to change
once they're confirmed. I mean, that may be the case, right? But of course, then you raise the specter of, well, who gets booted off the court? Right now, the left would love to have term limits on the Supreme Court, but what happens when there's should there in the future be a Supreme Court that's 6-3 liberal? Would that same position hold?
Well, I think that, and we were talking about this earlier, that it's not mandated in the Constitution, the number of members on the Supreme Court, and there's two ways to go about this. One is increasing the number, and the other is shuffling them through. Your lifetime appointment is to be a federal judge, not to be on the Supreme Court. I mean, that's the way that I've heard many legal analysts look at this and say that we could actually move them through the Supreme Court in whatever period of time we wanted to, 5, 10, 9, whatever, 15 years. Let me ask you about another important number, 20, which is the debate day coming up later on this month. And is it the 20 or 28th? I'm sorry. 27th. Thank you. I wrote it down and then I lost it. The 27th is, who stands to lose more in this debate?
Wow. Yeah, I think it's fraught for both candidates. We saw in 2020, the first debate, Donald Trump come out really, really aggressive. I don't think it did him any favors. I would be very curious to see the extent to which Trump and his allies try and set low expectations for Joe Biden. They keep doing that. They keep insisting Joe Biden isn't capable, that he's suffering from dementia, whatever it happens to be, that he needs to be propped up with pharmaceuticals in order to have a good performance. If they once again that expectation is super low, then I think it's easier for Biden to be successful. But then, of course, it is the case that incumbent presidents in recent years have tended to do poorly in those first debates. Whether or not that's affected by the fact that he's debating Donald Trump yet again, TBD. I also think it's very early, right? I think that that June is still a time when a lot of Americans aren't really paying that close attention. So if something really does go sideways, I don't know that it makes that big a difference anymore.
Wow. I don't know. I think that's changed. I think that the characters involved here, I think Trump and everything that we're looking at, including the Supreme Court's decision today, I think all of that plays into, expectations. I do think the State of the Union changed a lot. I think it changed Democrats' expectations for Biden. I think it assuaged a lot of fears that Democrats had about his ability to perform in prime time. I think that if they don't have a crowd, like I'm hearing they're not going to have a crowd, this hurts Trump tremendously because he feeds off that cheering and that. And also, if in fact they're going to cut his mic off when your time is over, I think that I almost cut you off. I think if they're going to cut his mic when he's finished talking, I think all this will frustrate him. Not to mention, I mean, it's hard to tell because none of us are shrinks here. Although I do a podcast called Shrinking Trump with these guys, and these are psychoanalysts and PhDs, and they say there are real tells that he has a severe cognitive decline that is progressing. And could that manifest itself in a debate? And should it? Could we? I mean, can you envision a moment here that totally changes the arc of this election?
No. I hate to be the sort of the cynical guy who, writes about the politics, but, I mean, what could it take in this way? I mean, I suppose it could negatively for Joe Biden. I mean, if Joe Biden sits up there and freezes like Mitch McConnell did,
right.
Like a medical emergency for either of them publicly.
Yeah,
I mean remember
honestly,
Hillary Clinton when she got the flu and she was like falling over, getting in the limo or whatever. I could see that, Philip, happening.
Well, what if Trump were to say, he says it now in his campaigns that we need to speed up executions for drug dealers, or that.
I don't think there's going to be an issue. I feel like voters, at least in my opinion, I feel like voters have chosen their sides. It's going to have to be something like a medical emergency if one of them ends up in the hospital or the doctor. I mean, it'd have to be something fundamental where we have to now switch to who they chose for vice president that could really make a difference.
That would be a great,
that'd
be a great debate, having them both in hospital beds sitting across from each other.
Well, that was almost what happened in the second debate in 2020, right? When Donald Trump came down with COVID.
That's true. Yeah. That is true.
So I guess as we progress here and we look at these at the conventions, I don't know if you saw. I mean, I don't. And this is something Nikki always says. It doesn't matter what he says. He trashed Milwaukee today in an interview. He
horrible city,
horrible city, nasty city. And of course he needs Wisconsin desperately. And of course Milwaukee and Madison, traditionally blue cities, but nonetheless, I wonder if the off the rails Trump is finding a place where the rails actually go around a corner too fast, and he can't maintain that momentum. And I get, with Paul Ryan coming out and then listening to Murkowski a couple of weeks ago come out and say, I'm wondering, is it a little too late, or can these pronouncements by people that just go, okay, this is enough? I mean, can it have an effect?
I mean, look, what is it? It's June 2024, right? He announced his candidacy in June 2015. It's been 9 years of, hey, hasn't this guy gone too far, right? Like, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the Milwaukee thing, I'm extremely confident, that we had this one report from Jake Sherman. I'm extremely confident that what he was saying is, oh, he's mad at Milwaukee because how they counted votes in 2020. That's always been his complaint about Milwaukee. And the entire point in Wisconsin, we heard this repeatedly in 2020 and at other times, is that the rest of Wisconsin, the red part of Wisconsin, it's very irritated by the cities because they are so blue, and they try constantly to try and undermine the amount of power that's held in those cities, right? So I don't think Wisconsinites outside of Milwaukee are going to be like, oh, how dare he? I think they're going to be like, right on. We hate Milwaukee. Milwaukee sucks. It's, this urban center that doesn't represent real Wisconsin. So there are all these ways in which constantly we see that Donald Trump's comments are not actually as damaging for him as they might seem. But we also have seen this for 9 years. 9 years. The guy sat there and trashed John McCain into the Republican Party. And what he revealed was that the Republican Party didn't care about John McCain. They cared about getting vengeance on people in power and the quote-unquote elites. And that continues to be the refrain.
I mean, suckers and losers, that has to reverberate somewhere with people.
Nope.
Though,
they don't believe it.
They don't care.
Okay. All right, last question, and I appreciate your time and jumping in. Another number. And with the conviction of Hunter Biden, does that free Mershon to possibly put Trump in jail, knowing that there's a good chance that if Biden's kid's in jail and Trump's in jail, is there some sort of weird balance there? Does Mershon putting Trump in jail help Trump in the fall, you think?
Well, I mean, look, I don't think we want a justice system in which judges make determinations about imprisonment based on politics, right? Like, I think that's.
Well, he already said out loud, though. He said out loud, I'm not putting you in jail because of the gag order violations, because you could be the next president. So he I don't know if that was a malaprop or something, right? That he didn't mean to say, but he's already said it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that each of those cases will be determined separately. I doubt either of them is going to go to jail. I suppose it's possible that there's some sort of probationary period or confinement for Trump. I think it's probably unlikely. I mean, 34 felonies, yes, but they are the lowest class of felonies in New York State. There's a lot of leeway that the judge has. I think that that he is making determinations based on Donald Trump's criminal history. Donald Trump, despite the fact that he has all these indictments and so on and so forth, he's never been convicted of a crime before. So he was a first-time offender in that regard. I think it's probably unlikely, but look, if you'd asked me 4 years ago if Donald Trump would ever be convicted of a crime, I would have thought it was unlikely. So what the hell do I know? All right, so we'll see. But I don't think that there's going to be sort of a tit for tat, leveling the balance, if you will, between Hunter Biden and Donald Trump.
Nikki, any last words?
I mean, I think that he's right. I think that that's exactly how they're going to do it. I'm surprised, Philip, that you said you don't think Hunter Biden is going to go to jail. I think there's a high probability that he could, just because of his troubling past, but Donald Trump won't serve any time. House arrest might be funny.
He too is a first-time offender in this regard, right? And I think that there is a sense. I mean, look, he was this close to having a plea deal, right? Until it fell apart in front of the judge. And I think that the federal government's, that the prosecution has achieved its aim of having sanctioned for Hunter Biden for what he did. And I think I don't know what the value is for the government having him in prison.
Right. He didn't actually commit a crime with the gun. So I mean, that's
right.
Also a good point.
Well, I'm reminded of that Mark Twain quote. It's not what you don't know that hurts you, what you know for sure that just ain't so. And I think that's kind of where we are with politics and the MAGA Nation Republican Party today. You look good, my friend. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, Philip.
Take care of BC for us, please, and say hi. All right. Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye. Again, that's Philip Bump, the correspondent for the Washington Post. Great stuff. I didn't want to embarrass him, but he's a #1 read reporter in the Washington Post.
He's excellent. If you guys don't read his stuff, you guys need to subscribe, obviously. He's excellent. I love talking to Philip Bump.
Always been nice to join us. We've had him on the air for 8 years, at least a long time.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you so much, Nikki. Find Nikki. Go to Really American Media. She posted her second for commentaries today, and really good stuff as always. We'll get more of that out there. I have one up too, a bunch of them up as well. Again, that's Really American Media. This is What the Franklin. That is Nikki Medoro. Let me see, wait, that right there. Yeah, you have to do it opposite of what you're looking at the camera, right?
Oh,
no,
do
the
you?
other way. Yeah,
I do it the other way? Oh, that's
You know what I was going to before? I thought maybe we should have done it this way.
No, goodness, great.
Good for you, bad for me. Good for you, bad for me.
No one needs to see my smile that much.
Yeah,
It's bright enough. It's fine.
All right.
There you go.
I'm Chip Franklin with Franklin. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.